So when it comes to the sons of God in Genesis chapter 6, the predominant view that a lot of people have is that the sons of God are angels, and these angels came down from heaven and they repopulated with people.
How did Zeus conceive Hercules? Zeus, the king of the gods, had an affair with a mortal woman named Alcmene. He disguised himself as Alcmene's husband, Amphitryon, and spent the night with her. As a result, Alcmene became pregnant with twins, one fathered by Zeus, Hercules, and one by Amphitryon.
But what most people don't know is that view predominantly came from the book of Enoch. And the book of Enoch was written around 300 to around 100 BCE. So with that being the case, Enoch was written in what's called late Aramaic or Imperial Aramaic. And Imperial Aramaic is influenced by Persian and Greek. A very common theme in Greek writing is the gods coming down and intermingling with women. You see this time and time again in Greco-Roman stories. And so Enoch, being a product of his cultural time, Enoch being a product of Greek literature, what happened was you have Talmudic literature that talks about the sons of God in light of the book of Enoch. But when you look at when Genesis was written down, you start to understand what happened. Originally, the sons of God in Genesis chapter 6 was a Babylonian Israelite concept. And the concept then evolved from a Babylonian Israelite concept to a Greco-Roman Hellenized concept that was read back into the text. So originally, the sons of God in Genesis 6 were simply men, and these were men from the line of Seth who intermarried the daughters of Cain. But when Enoch was written down by somebody pretending to be Enoch. That person wrote Enoch, and they wrote Enoch based on their culture. They wrote Enoch based on what people around the writer believed. And Enoch is written in late Aramaic, so Enoch would have been influenced by late Aramaic, Persian, and Greek culture. So the person who wrote Enoch down, they're writing down the stories they're hearing about angels coming down from the sky and angels intermingling with people, and that is how they produced Enoch. Then after Enoch was produced, sages and rabbis, they read Genesis, but they also now had a new text. They now had Enoch, and they were trying to make sense of Genesis in light of Enoch, but Enoch is Greco-Roman influence. Enoch is Hellenized. And then you get to the New Testament with 1 Peter and Jude. And usually people go to 1 Peter and Jude as proof text for Genesis 6, but they don't know that the sons of God in Genesis 6 are not the same sons of God in Jude, because this is an evolved view. So in Jude and 1 Peter, it talks about these angels who came down, they left their first estate, and now they're chained in outer darkness. Well, that is Greek. That is the same story in a different culture, which is the Titans, the Greek Titans who came down and they were punished by the gods, and now they are trapped in outer darkness. So you can see the Hellenization of the New Testament, you can see the Hellenization of Enoch, and you can see how people looked at Genesis in the first century from a Greco-Roman point of view because they were Hellenized. So I get how people say you need to look at Enoch, and you need to look at Jude, and you need to look at 1 Peter. And it's plainly obvious that the sons of God in Genesis 6 are angels when you look at Job and when you look at these other texts. But what people don't understand is that Job, Genesis 6, Enoch, and the New Testament are all hundreds of years apart, and they all are being written under different cultural influences. And if you don't take that into consideration, you're not going to come away with the most accurate interpretation of the text, because you're going to assume a lot of things about the text without understanding the timeline of when these texts were written and what they were pulling off of and what time frame and what era. So when you look at Genesis 6, you have to understand that the original version of Genesis 6 started off simple, and then it evolved into something more complex, like almost everything. So originally, the sons of God in Genesis chapter 6 were not angels, and then that view evolved into angels and into what we now believe today. So these are the things I talk about in my book, Secrets of the Bible from the East. If you do not have my books, and if you want to learn more, you need to get my books by going to the link in my bio. I go into a lot more about how to understand Genesis from the cultural context it was written from. You have to understand that the Genesis account was written in an exilic period. You have to understand that the Genesis account was written while the Israelites were in Babylon. You have to understand that the New Testament was written while the Jews were under Greco-Roman oppression. And so when you start to understand the oppressions and the cultures that influence the Bible as a whole, the different cultures, then you can paint a better picture of what's going on. So definitely get my books by going to the link in my bio and subscribe.